Hello friends, Namaste and welcome to Mahabharata Myths. So this is episode 8 of the series where we take a look at myths and misconceptions about the greatest epic in the world and look at the real facts from authentic sources. So as usually with me is my fellow co-host and author Pranshu Saxena. Namaste Pranshu, thanks for joining again. And we are also joined by Vijay Krishnan from Bharat Narratives, so who's been kind enough to be with us all these days. Thank you Vijay for joining.
Thank you.
So let's straight away go into the myth for the today, which is on Duryodhana. So here is how the myth is all about. Gandhari made Duryodhana's body strong except his thighs. So this is a popular scene which you would have remembered seeing in the Mahabharata TV show. So basically, what happens is that Gandhari tells Duryodhana that she's going to use her powers and give him a body of steel or a body of iron, depending on what metal was in vogue at that time. So Duryodhana agrees, and she says, "You come to me without clothes, so that I will use my powers and strengthen your body." But then Krishna stops him and laughs at him. So Duryodhana is embarrassed, so he covers his thigh with a leaf or something, and then he goes before Gandhari. And then she regrets it, saying that now only the lower part of your body is not strong. So that is why when there is the final battle with Bhima, uses the means on Duryodhana's thigh and breaks. So that's what the myth is about. But is it a myth? This is what we have seen on TV. But the reality is something different, which we are going to discuss. So no such incident is there in the Vyasa Mahabharata. Now, there is a small background here about the so-called steel or iron body of Duryodhana. Now, there was a battle with the Gandharvas. This was during the Gosha Yatra. So, what happens is that Duryodhana decides to go to the forests where the Pandavas are dwelling, and he basically wants to mock them. He wants to see them suffering in the forests and laugh at them. So, he goes in the pretext of a Gosha Yatra or to count the cows. So there, what happens? His army encounters the Gandharvas and they are defeated. And in the end, Arjuna has to save him, so which is even more humiliating. So Duryodhana decides that he will kill himself. He's so ashamed of what has happened. So at that time, the Daityas or the Asuras, they send a being called as Kritya. So this being Kritya then tells Duryodhana the truth. So the truth is that Kritya tells Duryodhana that it is they, the Rakshasas or the Daityas, who created Duryodhana, and they made his upper part of the body from Vajras. And uh, she tells Duryodhana that he has been blessed by Ishvara, so he has strength. So very quickly, let's just take a look at this reference. So this comes from the Goshayatra Parva in the Aranyaka Parva. So here Kritya is talking to Duryodhana and is trying to console him, telling him not to kill himself. He says that we obtained you from Maheshwara in ancient times. So how the past of Duryodhana was created. He says your upper part of the body has been made from a collection of Vajras. So Vajra here does not necessarily refer to Indra's weapon, but it refers to uh, powerful elements. So it says it is impenetrable to every type of weapon. So this is a very important part. But the lower part was created by the goddess herself out of flowers. So this clearly shows that the upper part of the body is powerful, but the lower part is not so powerful. And this is not because of Gandhari, but this was created by the Daityas. So this is the actual fact related to Duryodhana's so-called iron body or steel body. So it was the Daityas who created this, and Kritya comes and tells this to Duryodhana. So there is no incident in the Mahabharata wherein Gandhari uses her powers to create a iron or steel body. In fact, she does not even bless him with success. So we know that scene also in most of the versions of the Mahabharata. So he comes and asks her for a blessing, but he says, "Let the righteous win." He does not say that you win. So Gandhari creating a Duryodhana strong body is a myth. So now Vijay will go into more details of this. I request Vijay to please take over from
Yeah. What we must first look at is, in the conversation between the Daityas and uh, Duryodhana, what comes out that we must look deeper into rather than just the characters and what they're speaking. So as Deepak ji mentioned, it is Maheshwara and Devi Parvati who create Duryodhana in an or the concept of Duryodhana, and this is very important from a point of view that why are these characters coming in during the epic and playing the role that they're playing. So as we have seen in earlier episodes of Mahabharata myths, the main focus of the Mahabharata is not to give victory to one side over the other, or it's not a mere battle between cousins and brothers. The whole Mahabharata is kind of a Bhara Harana project of on
Bhumi
uh,
Bari.
on Earth. It's Bhumi Bar Haran project. So everything, every incident that has occurred in the epic moves towards this objective. So when the Daityas are saying that it is Maheshwara who has created, what we must glean from this is Maheshwara is anyway Samhara Shakti. In the Sanatana Pantheon, if you look at the Trimurtis, each of them have a very specific role. When Brahmadeva is responsible for Srishti, Sriman Narayana is the Palaka, who is the preserver, and Maheshwara is, the Samhara Shakti. This is not to mean that Maheshwara causes unwanted destruction. It is just the process. Srishti Sthiti Laya. I mean, the cycle that proceeds that way. So, Duryodhana and his comrades, whoever participate in the war on his side, are created with a purpose to fulfill the ultimate aim of the Bhumibar Haran project, which is why the Daityas make such a reference. Secondly, this is also evident in a later episode. When Ashwathama carries out in the Saptika Parva, he is also blessed again by Maheshwara to carry out that final act in the war, whereby the armies, the losses on both sides are balanced, so as to create a sense of balance after the great event that is the war. So that is as far as what that conversation between the Daityas and Duryodhana tells us. Secondly, they also want it's anyway it's always what we see in our Puranas and Itihasas. It's always a struggle between the forces of good and evil, and each side will try to its last best. So Duryodhana is summed up as the representative of all the Asuric and Daitic forces on earth. So the Daityas convince him to not give up his life, as Duryodhana has, want to do in lot of episodes. Not only the Goshayatra Parva, it is repeated even after the Rajasuya Parva. He tries to give up his life. So Duryodhana is that force which has to be again brought into focus every time, and this time the Daityas take that mantle and they bring him back to focus as to what is his role in the current scenario and who is all in his support, Karna, Shalya, and all the other warriors. So they explain to him the purpose of his existence and send him back to Earth, saying that we are here to support you. All the kings who are supporting you are from our amshas or are from who support us. So that is the part that is explained in the Vanaparva, Aranyaka Parva. After the Goshayatra, when he contemplates suicide, the Asuras make an appearance. He is carried to Rasatala, and this conversation particularly takes place. Now let's go on to the other aspect wherein we can prove that Devi Gandhari blessing him was not really necessary. Why so? One, all of us know that Duryodhana was also a student of Balarama Deva, who is an expert in mace warfare, and he is also a Gurudeva to Bhima. Both Bhima and Duryodhana learnt at Balarama, but there is no doubt in the Mahabharata. There are multiple instances wherein it is proved that Duryodhana was the more skilled of the two. Bhima was blessed more with physical strength, with greater brute force, and he was blessed with a lot of boons, as we see in different episodes in the epic. But it is Duryodhana who triumphs in terms of skill. This is evidenced by Sri Krishna just before the final battle with Bhima. He clearly says that all during your exile, your brother hasn't been idle. He's been practicing on an iron statue of Bhima, and it is his skill that will make him invincible in the battle that is just about to commence. So we must hold our wits and pray for Bhima's victory. So even Sri Krishna accepts that Duryodhana is no mean opponent. He does not need a last minute boon like Gandhari Devi's Drishti to really win. Yes, there are other factors like the curse of Rishi Maitreya and everything. Those are other factors that play into the events and lead them to a conclusion. However, that is no reflection on Duryodhana's personal skill. In fact, he's taught by Balarama Deva during, I think between the episodes of the Lakshagraha burning and Draupadi Swayambara. That is where he, goes
At
with
at
Shakuntala
with at Mithila. He was
at
taught in
Mithila,
Mithila,
exactly. And in Bhagavata, if we cross reference, this episode I think rightly comes after the Shramantaka Mani chapter. So
yeah,
Balarama Deva
which is
goes
right
to
after
Mithila.
Lakshagraha.
Yeah, yeah. After Lakshagraha, Balarama goes to Mithila. That is where Duryodhana meets him and seeks his tutelage. So there's a lot of saying in that. He's no doubt a skilled warrior. He's practiced, and in fact, that comes out no better than in a conversation between Dharmaraja and Sri Krishna in the end, where he blames Yudhishthira for giving Duryodhana an open challenge. You can challenge any of us brothers, and if you defeat us, you can take back the kingdom. So Krishna is really holding his wits as to if what happens if Duryodhana chooses an Nakula or a Sahadeva or even Yudhishthira. Thankfully, as it is probably fated, he chooses Bhima to be his opponent, and then still they have to remind Bhima of his pledge to break Duryodhana's tie. So these are a lot of factors that play around in terms of how Duryodhana is defeated in battle. There is nothing called Gandhari's curse in anywhere in the Mahabharata or any version of the Mahabharata also, any recension. I think it's more a part of folklore that comes later.
And a little bit expansion on that is that, like I say, every portion, every story in Mahabharata has three aspects at least.
Hmm.
Like the Uparicharar, which is the
Hmm.
transcendental one, Astikadi as is, and a Dharmic slash Manvadi, and then
Hmm.
obviously as several other learned rishis have said there are other meanings, posture, polom, which are like beyond our ken, like our understanding here, because we are talking about just three dimensional, so we're talking about our earth. So here the
Yes.
Uparicharar meaning is that Duryodhana is supported by the strength of the Kshatriyas. The Kshatriya
Hmm.
basically, which was basically becoming the oppressor, the tyranny of the
Hmm.
Kshatriyas, and they basically were the Bhumi Bharan was about. And
Yes.
the lower portions signify the Vaishyas, Shudras, the general public, who are
Hmm.
basically softer, softer skills, softer, and basically, so it's basically a fight between the gun and the butter, right? The general public makes butter, and only the warriors or dacoits use the guns or the weapons, right? So this is where the other reflection about it is Shiva is basically uh, indicating that I will put all the tyranny in one portion, and I will put the creative skills, the creativity in the other portion, and that's where the Bhima is also. The Bhima chooses when he hits him on the thighs, he chooses the public, so he chooses goes towards the public side, and he basically breaks his thighs, which again is they say that no, it is not allowed in the Gada Yuddha to actually break somebody's thighs, but
Hmm.
well in Agni Puran, basically which describes the various aspects of it. Uh, that's not really correct, but even if we say that it wasn't you were not allowed to hit the bottom side, the what Bhim is saying that defeating tyranny by whatever means is correct. And as you said that Krishna is really upset at Yudhishthir for giving an opening
Open
to
offer.
yeah. But the point is on the flip side is that Yudhishthir has the faith in him. That's where the one part where one portion where the total faith Yudhishthir has in the final result, because Krishna is on their side. So that is also there. So their hair is like the sort of the deity is little angry. The
Hmm.
devotee, you're basically putting too much trust in me, but which is the part of the the whole cycle between the deity and the devotee. And if you look at the whole thing, as Deepak also pointed out very correctly, that Gandhari never wished success to her sons specifically. She said, whoever is righteous. And she knew who was righteous. She came to the court. She actually, you know, spoke against Duryodhan right there, literally disowning Duryodhan in the court during the Bhagavati Parv, right, when Krishna had come. So Gandhari's choice at that point in time was literally made. She had, and again, it is also Glani. She didn't interfere, and when Draupadi was dragged to the court and everything. So that thing has percolated for 13 years in Gandhari. So Gandhari was not going to take a side of her sons. She could, as like every mother, she would pray for the long life of her sons as much as it, and she was probably grateful for Yudhishthir for giving the 13 months, because you see Bhim at one point in time did raise the question, 13 days can be 13 years, 13 months can be 13 years. They didn't actually define the term year. I can go and kill them now. And Yudhishthir basically, allows, yeah, let's give some time. Let's give time for the peace to get a chance eventually. Even like Bhim and Draupadi, Bhim, who's very, very upset right there, even in the first year and the next year of the by the time the Bhagavad Yan Parv comes, Bhim also realizes that I'm for my own ego, for my own anger, for my own pratigya, I could be putting the fate of the countless millions, the public itself, at risk. And so he also chooses actually to ask Krishna to go for peace. That point is there. Now, the second part of it comes in is that when Duryodhana actually fights, so you see throughout the epic, Duryodhana, other than Gadayudh, which is single combat, he was a Marathi. He was one of the 10 or 11 Kaurav brothers who were Marathis. 11th being, I think, Yuyutsu, and so the 10 of them were Maharathis. Not all of them were Maharathis level. And so when Duryodhana, but he was defeated by Drupad, and when he was defeated by Gandharvs, he was beaten badly. He was like the body was in pain and everything. So though he had a sort of a stronger than average body, he was basically not really. He still felt pain. He still uh, he still he still felt pain, and he still was wounded, and like he was fainted fighting Bhim by arrows on day one. He fainted fighting Bhim again in chapter 80, chapter 58, 72, 79, 79, 80. So there are several other during the Bhisham Parv. There are like 3 or 4 occasions where he fights Bhim. One was like, not conclusive, where basically they kept fighting and the other soldiers came in there. 3 different occasions when he's actually defeated. In one of this is very interesting. So when Bhim hits him, he hits him with 8 arrows. And so there is a big money basically which Duryodhana is wearing on his chest. And the arrows come around and they say it's like how the planets are around the sun. Now, this is a very interesting thing. Mahabharata tells you a lot more information at the same time. It is also telling you here that we know that the planets revolve around the sun, right? So there's another hint here. Rigveda also gives you that, the earth revolves around the sun. So, that basic, and this is a heliocentric, I mean, this heliocentric theory didn't even come till Tycho Brahe came around 1500 AD, right? So this is like 3000 plus years before that was written down. Rigveda, from the language of Rigveda alone and Mahabharata. So 3000 years before we understood that, sun was the center of the solar system. So this tells you another very interesting story here. And again, it tells you 8 planets. Now we know the 6 main planets, including Earth, and the seventh being the Moon. And so here, there's a mention of this 8th planet, and more likely an asteroid, which is basically. So this is a way you can probably we can look at our history and find out wherever there is an extra, body like a comet or the eighth. An asteroid which basically came so much so that it could be seen by the naked eye. So there's a way you can time Mahabharata. Not a very accurate way, but again, this tells you very much in. So in one shlok, just Bhim hitting Duryodhan on his chest and wounding him, we are getting a lot of information right there and then. Then in another occasion when Bhim is fighting, so Duryodhan hits Bhim and he hits Bhim into the organs and everything, and then Bhim hits back with 3 arrows, which hurts Duryodhan very much. So again, the point is in his body, and these armors were very huge. The armor was very impressive. As I said, like armor was not made of really iron. So, like his body, his armors were not really made of iron. They were made of paper, bark of the trees. They were just finely detailed down, cut down into fine strips, then lacquered up, and then these lacquered shields were basically the series up there, and they could resist arrows. And as I said, recently, like in 2016, they in America they did a show in which they actually recreated the armors, and then they shot arrows at 45 miles an hour, and the armor were able to withstand it. Wooden armor was able to withstand those arrows. So that's why you have this shallaki, like looking like porcupines, that so many arrows sticking in the body, not really touching it. But the other part of it is, and again, this is where the warriors are fighting each other. Even Duryodhan hits Bhim, and Bhim gets faints away in one of those battles. Is that they actually not only use the sharp, but they use also hammerheads. So when you hit on it like this, your body, the armor is constricting your air inside the body. And basically, when you hit it, you get a low pressure center, which hurts your ribs and basically knocks you out, takes your breath away, literally. So those are the part. But on top of it, we have these portions where the arrows go in and hit. So even though those 8 arrows in the description of the sun and the 8 planets may not have really penetrated inside and wounded his body as much, it would have hurt him the other way. There are another occasion where they say that Bhim hits his internal organs. So basically, it did break through that Vajranabhi, Vajra like body and wounds him. He's fighting Draupades, the 5 Draupades at one point in time, and he's very badly wounded. And so when he staggers off, his chariot is broken and everything, Jadal comes and takes him off. Duryodhan then sits on the floor of the chariot of Jayadratha. He's totally like winded. He's totally wounded. And here we are getting another point, right? When he goes to Bhisham, he's like angry because of the pain and the his wounds and everything. And so Bhisham gives this Vishalya Karani, Aushadhi, to basically reveal to basically heal him. So here again we are getting the point that he did, like, if you cut him, does he not bleed? He does. So Duryodhan basically had like a more stronger than average body, but and had other maybe indications to it. But in the sense, he was still a human being. He still bled, and several times, like, and on top of it, he wasn't confident in his body. Drone had to give him that extra, unbreakable armor and sends him to stop Arjun. And Arjun then hits him
on day 14.
between the fingernail and the skin beneath, and wound him there. And that's basically he runs out of the battlefield with his hands shaking away. So all these descriptions are like, yeah, he did feel pain. He did get beaten up a lot. He he was, and again, as we have mentioned again, he never thought with his head. So even where the conditions were really bad for him, he would stay in the battlefield. The name Duryodhana is right. Now that's another story about it. That when Arjun is alone with the whole army, everyone attacks him, including Duryodhana, and he beats away, and Duryodhana runs away. So there's nobody else Duryodhana is fighting other than Arjun. So Duryodhana is wounded or hurt so much that he runs away from Arjun the first time. He comes back the second time. When the second time he's fighting, Arjun in between basically stops fight. I mean, he's fighting others, and he looks at Duryodhana and he taunts Duryodhana and his names. So Duryodhana is standing in one on his rath just and vomiting blood. So in critical edition it's vomiting blood, and there's also, like, the blood is flowing out. But the critical edition translation literally is that he's vomiting blood. He's been hurt so much by Arjun's arrow the second time. So Arjun is still taunting him, and Arjun basically says, "Yeah, your name is Duryodhana. You stay in the battlefield. Whenever, even if you will die, you will." So that's why, that's another aspect of it is the arrogance, his ego. And at the same time, you have the second part of it is that he has to be sometimes propelled, like Drona does or Bhisham does, to go and actually engage in battle. So that's well, and as I said, like, he loses to everybody. Dhishduman defeated him on a couple of occasions. Arjun, Satyaki, Yudhamanyu, Utmauja, Bhim defeated him on the 14 days. So it was like basically you enter the Chakravyuh to protect Jayadratha, and Ghanta bajate hai na. So basically you hit Duryodhan and go inside. So everybody did. On the night of the 14th night and the 15th morning, you could say, he was defeated. Yudhishthir, Bhim, Satyaki, Nakul, all of them defeat him. On day 16, he again loses to Yudhishthir. Just before the Shasan is killed, he is again defeated by Bhim. So it's not that, like, he was engaging a lot, and again his body, as you said, is he's able to take a lot of punishment here. Even on the 18th day, when he basically is fighting that Gada Yudh, during the battle, he's already been defeated by Bhim and Dhishduman twice. So he's already been, he's already gone through a battle in the morning and has suffered some wounds from it. And then that's why he was in the, Jal's thumb. He's made the water frozen and he was hiding inside the water to sort of revive himself from this. So again, the same thing as with, Bhisham giving him medicine. Duryodhan did need healing, and so he wasn't made of iron as such. As we talked about, he wasn't really a man of steel.
So even if he had a strong body, it was not that he could not be wounded. Maybe it gave him sufficient strength so that he could not be killed, but he definitely could be injured. He definitely could suffer wounds. So, like we have seen many instances, he is defeated, he is hurt, he is bleeding, and he even falls unconscious. There are some
Yeah,
incidents also. So it's not that it gave him complete power. Maybe it gave him an additional layer of protection for his life.
ability to withstand more pain, more
Yeah,
punishment,
withstand more
and
pain.
then everybody, that's the point. So that's where also, both of them, like, so Yudhishthir doesn't have that, like some extreme body or something. He Yudhishthir also, like every one of the warriors, had an armor which was almost unbreakable, because that is also given, like when a Jadarath has taken away, the Naika, their foster sister, who's saying that Jadarath has just taken Draupadi away, wear your invincible armors and go and get her back. So basically, it's not invincible armor, was not like, just like, it was quite commonplace, as and you even, in this, the armor is given to Duryodhana by Drona, right? So, but in Yudhishthir's case, he would actually withdraw himself from the battlefield wherever there would be an extra risk, because as a king, he is also basically responsible for his warriors. He's not putting his warriors into, when he's putting himself at risk, he's putting his warriors at risk, trying to rescue him out of the position. And we see a lot of places Duryodhan basically needs to get he stays in there. He doesn't, like, easily come out, and they have to go in. The Kaurava warriors go in. They lose a lot of them in trying to rescue Duryodhan out. And this is where, the two different things. They both have the same name, Duryodhan, Yudhishthir. The name is exactly the same. The one who is constant in battle, the one who is difficult to remove from battle. One who is constant in battle also is flexible. The one who's difficult to remove literally is difficult to understand, that what war is about at points, and that's where his ego comes in. So that's again the, as you said, higher layers of Mahabharata. Every story, every aspect has like multiple layers. So there is one is flexibility and egoless fighting. The other one has got a ego and anger, ahankar in his fighting also.
So I think there's one more important point we need to talk about. So since Bhima killed him by hitting him on his thighs, which was his Achilles heel, so as to say. So is that fair? That is a question which everyone asks. Was it fair? Was it unfair? And then we know that Balrama gets so angry that he tries to attack Bhima. But was it because he hit him on the thighs, or was it because he kicked him after he fell down? So was it
So,
fair? What is your view on this?
so
Was it
my
fair for
view is,
Bhima to do this?
yeah. So my view is that, this is war.
Yes.
War is a serious business. War is where you are already committing. You are going beyond the point. You are basically in an engagement where people will die. People are going to die. There, there cannot be arbitrary rules set aside. There could be rules like, you're not attacking somebody sleeping. You're not attacking a wounded person. You're not attacking if somebody is helping somebody. A wounded person, taking a wounded person across the battlefield. Then you cannot attack them. For example, Drone attacks King Suchitra and his sons when they are removing the wounded or helping the wounded out, and that's when all these Brahma rishis and everybody come, and Drone, hey buddy, not done. There is some, so yes, there are some lines you cannot cross. But for example, so Bhim basically does two things. He breaks his thighs, which actually he took the vow, because Duryodhana exposed himself to Draupadi when he removes the I mean, the Vyas is a little reticent to describe it in detail, his own grandson's horrible deed. But literally, if you think about it, he basically exposed himself. So Bhim said, I'm going to break your thighs, and that was his oath at that point in time. And so he fulfilled his oath. That's one part. The second part is Matre. Matre again also cursed him about the same thing. Reinforces. Matre, okay, who's Matre? That's a very interesting thing. Matre is from the Drupad's family himself. He's from a Panchal. He's from the Panchal royal family. So it's like, so he basically makes sure if Bhim somehow thinks about Dharam Yudh for some reason, he he basically doubles down on it. So Maitre curses Duryodhan's arrogance. Of course, there's an Uparicharar thing is that your thighs will be broken, is like the Vaishya and Shudras. The general public will actually stop supporting you, which actually is also reflected very clearly with his Vaishya, Dhritarashtra Vaishya son, Yutsu, going over to the Pandav camp. So that basically that part is also there. And now the second part is kicking his head. That also Bhim took that oath. So yes, you're right. Balram was probably a little bit angry. See, again, the thing is, Balram was equally enamored to both sides. He's related to both sides. He's Bahalik's grandson. He is very much in and Duryodhana was also his disciple. They are like sons. Like the whole idea of a disciple is then you're like your son. Like Satyaki basically will do everything for Arjun. He was his disciple. So in this scenario, you are looking at a father looking at his two sons fighting, and then one son losing, but then the other son sort of kicking him in the head, and that's basically why Balram gets angry. So,
I think kicking
Bal-
him after he had fallen down, I think that was what made Balrama
but you
so
can't kick
angry.
him. You can't kick him on the head when he's not fallen down, right? That's also
So
so.
probably that was why he got angry.
And actually, from the point of view of the visual representation of that, that is where Vyas is actually also basically impelling Bhim to do that, is to show when you do crimes or something like that, you will have a horrible fate. When Duryodhana's thigh is broken and everything, he's kicked in the head. Basically, it is saying, what you have done, buddy. It's not okay. You fought and you fell down. Oh, I did a. I hota hai. But the thing is, you will also be disrespected after that.
And he
And
suffers a lot before dying. He lies there with his broken thighs throughout the night, and then Ashwatthama and the others come, they talk to him. So all the while he's suffering. Naturally, if the thighs are broken, he's going to suffer. So he doesn't have a merciful ending like, say, for Karna. Karna is beheaded and he dies immediately. In fact, even Dushasana also dies immediately. But
yeah.
Duryodhana lies on the battlefield for a very long time. He suffers. Probably that's when he has to introspect on all that he did wrong.
And I think that's also the sort of the imagery Vyas is also putting, that Duryodhan is the avatar of Kali, the Kali Yuga himself. So Kali Yuga is like that long night, and then he expires before the sun actually rises. So that basically is what Vyas is also saying. When the long night of Kali Yuga will end, the sun will rise, the Dharma sun will rise again. So there's a lot of other imagery around it.
Imagery.
Um, See, logically, I would say, like, I've just defeated the king. I will just leave a guard there to make sure. And so that's why in the other the foreign in Mahabharata, like for Indonesian and everything, it's not the next night where the Ashwatthama and others attack. They plan it. They attack some months later when Parikshit is born. Actually, they attack at that point in time. So that actually takes away that Ashwatthama hitting Uttara's garb, because in Southeast Asia and other places, Ashwatthama is still revered. He's the he's the guru of the people who go out and sort of I don't know what you use, colonize, but expand Indian civilization, interact with the locals, and then expand the Indian
He's
civilization
kind
there.
of a progenitor. He's
Yeah,
almost
he
like
was
a
like a
progenitor
progenitor,
there.
exactly. And so that's where the point is, his Ashwatthama is not seen as a baby killer, literally, as he's like. And again, that part is, again, I think it may be a later editions where there was a lot of Shaivite, Vaishnavite, uh,
Hmm.
you know, uh, uh, like internal kalah, internal fighting with each other. Like, even it might have even at many various other aspects. Like, even Panini says, hey, the worshippers of Arjun and the worshippers of Vasudev are fighting each other when their own Ishtadevas fought on the same chariot. So, which is basically this, it's a part of our culture, that people take two sides, and then they actually take that aggression and rivalry to extreme levels, as we have seen in Karn Arjun.
Karan Arjun.
Yeah, exactly. So the thing is that there is always that aspect of the society itself. We are part of it,
Hmm.
and that's why Mahabharata interests everyone. Is because we become so engaged in it that we take it to that level, and that basically is also probably the part of it. Uh, there's a story, the story of the crows and the owls, right? Which Ashwatthama
Yeah.
sees on the 18th night, right?
18.
And the story is from the Panchtantra, where the crows unite. But if you look at the 18 days battles before that, crows are with crows are always shown as with on the sides of Kauravas, because crows are supposed to be carrion eaters and other things, right? So that's a very automatic reversal right there, because now the Shiv is now part of it. Mahadev is about to do the balancing act. So here, even the association of crows and owls reverses all of a sudden in Soptic Parv. So again, these are all like several other like higher thinking. As I said,
higher meaning.
unfortunately, Colum, we probably do not have the enough bandwidth or enough information right now to understand what all these meant. Um, as a point of storytelling. And again, this is also like the good ship Mahabharata, right? Everybody knows that Mahabharata is a great granth, and it's passed on orally. So if you have a great story or something, I want it to last forever. I want associate it and hang it into the as a new boat on a new boat, or a new companion on the ship Mahabharata, you could say, sailing through the ages. And so we have 509 upakhyans, growing through it, telling those stories, and like Savitri, Satyavan, Nal, Damayanti, all of those, Ramayana itself, before it was Ramopakyan before it, again came out and became a full Ramayana. So all of those are part of this, are put in as part of Mahabharata. As I said, even one shloka, like eight arrows around that. See, all of this, they try to add in as much information, and this is also the point which Vyas is trying to do. He's trying to feed you information. You, you are passing everything by orally. You cannot actually have extra stuff, because that's why he edited it down. And it's time, the shloka, the granthas in the Vedas are about 1 million. So he takes it down to Rigved to around 10,000 shlokas, 10,500 shlokas. So that's basically what he's doing. He's editing it out, something somebody can recite in a whole day. And when he recites it in a whole day, he can do it for every day for the next like 3 4 years. He will remember everything, so nothing gets lost. So you try to capture as much information. It's like the zipping as much information about it, and then so when the shlokas we are translating, we are opening it up and we are just cleaning out all of these. So that's where the other parts of that, his body, Duryodhana's body, comes into a picture here. And I mean, and as I tell you, ancient Indians had a great skill at iron making. The idea, what they did was that they realized that the problem iron faces is with the oxide. So they actually expose the first layer after an iron is forged, smelted, to an oxide layer. So the oxide already acts as an other shield. That's why we have the iron pillar and everything lasting for thousands of years without rust. Actually the rust is already there. Rust is part of the shielding itself. And so if Mahadev as you said, the greatest architect of them all, the part of the creativity. He would make the perfect body. That body will not bleed. The body will not. But he gave it more power, but he allowed it to be human enough in this.
So before we conclude, Vijay, would you like to comment on the death of Duryodhana and whether Bhima's killing of Duryodhana was fair or unfair? What is your view on
I believe, as Pranchuji said, it is all. Like yesterday, as we had a discussion on Twitter, the end purpose of Mahabharata is to restore dharma, and wherever there should be dharma, certain things have to take place. So, from that viewpoint, it is fair enough. And as Krishna repeatedly conveys to Dharmaraja through during the end phases of the war, until Duryodhana is slain, you cannot have call it a complete victory. So the means have to justify the end, if I may use that phrase. So in that way, it is fair. Yeah, the means, exact technical means might raise questions, but the end is justified. And as Pranchuji mentioned, the night is long. It probably allows Duryodhana to contemplate, as to the consequences of what he has done. And even before that final battle begins, there's only three warriors left: Kritvarma, Kripacharya, and Ashwathama, and everybody on the battlefield is dead. There is a phase from at which he runs from the battlefield into hiding. So during which he contemplates as to whether did I take the right path. Did it kind of, I won't call it regret, but logically he questions himself as to is this what Vidura warned against? Is this the consequence that Vidura stopped me from doing? So there is some point Duryodhana already realized the consequences of what he had done. If not, you know, in terms of regret, genuine regret. I think he at least was aware of the consequences. And to conclude, I think this myth that Devi Gandhari blessed him with an iron body arises from two upakhyanas in the Mahabharata. As Pranchuji said, it is upakhyanas, these various tales that beautifully bind themselves into a work called the Mahabharata. So there's one, as we've already discussed, is this armor, invincible armor concept that comes throughout the epic, and specifically in the battle, the one that Dronacharya ties on Duryodhana. The second is more important in the Stree Parva, when the Pandavas kind of meet Devi Gandhari. Her Divya Drishti is not something that is disputed. Her eyes do have retained that tapasya shakti, and when she looks at Yudhishthira's toe, it is still burnt. So probably over the ages, as the story transmitted itself, they tied two and two and put together possibly into such a kind of concept that she blessed Duryodhana also with a Vajra body.
It is probably a reflection on the little bit of it is also sort of a later poet's imagination or something, that her looking at her son was like a mother, but looking at Yudhishthir was like an aunt. She probably never differentiated. So if her Divya Drishti would fall on Yudhishthir's toe and it basically crumples up and gets destroyed, the same thing might have happened on Duryodhan, because Duryodhan, see, Gandhari was still a sati, right? Her moral compass was centered. Like, she may have regretted what she has done in the past, like, that Draupadi's Kirhana, she didn't interfere, but then later on she did, and her satitva, her tapasya was taken by Krishna to put another balance in there, to get his own kul.
Plan.
Because after, when the huge the all the rest of the empires are destroyed and everything, when the Pandavas will not be there, then his progeny will become the, and that is also reflective, right? We have the southern legends about Shiva destroying the sons of Narsimha, right?
Exactly.
Right. Or like
As Vrishaba.
destroying Narsimha himself as a like a
Narasimha
strange
himself.
bird, like Garuda Bhuraka or something. The name is
Gandaveru.
like,
No, no,
that
I think Ganda Verunda is Vishnu. I think this is Sharaba. Sharaba Avatara,
Sharaba,
he
sorry, he
destroys
becomes a
Narasimha.
Sharaba. Sorry, yeah, yeah, sorry. And then, like, another story of, uh,
Vrishabhopakyana.
Yeah, and another place where Shiva takes the form of a bull and destroys the sons
Bulbul,
of Vishnu.
Vrishabhopakyana, where he
Yeah,
destroys Vishnu's sons in the netherworld
no, yeah,
in battle
exactly.
with the Apsaras.
So Vishnu is realizing that he is very powerful. Like, in case of Parshuram, he doesn't leave a progeny as such. He does not leave that unregulated, unsupervised power center, right? Powerful.
Exactly, exactly.
Exactly, like nuclear rods. In case
Hmm.
of Ram, it's like love and Kush, which are also part of the Bhumi,
Hmm.
Sita. So, they're centered, they're grounded, literally,
The grounded.
and now here in this case, he has many wives and in many sons, and all of them one after the other, like equal champions of in their own right. Pradyuman, Sam, Charudeshan. Charudeshan is so called because when he goes to fight, a lot of crows fly because they like to feast on the bodies of the warriors,
Hmm.
right?
Okay.
And Narudeshan, so basically he has, and after that, what they say is the power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. So Krishna actually even allows and basically plans for his own, that Bhumi Bhar Haran project doesn't fail. Like 36
Fail.
years later, then we have another Bhumi Bhar Haran problem, because his sons have now become the tyrannical aspect, which
Exactly.
basically he was fighting against.
Probably
So
Krishna
he
doesn't
uses
have
that
the.
Gandhari's power, right? And so
Exactly.
that's why the poet would say, if Gandhari's power can destroy, her power can also save her sons, because the
Hmm.
mother, that's that relationship, which is part of it. But the point is that in actual epic, Gandhari does not deviate from dharma that
Dharma.
much.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I
I
think
mean,
one more point when you mentioned Krishna and his sons was what struck me was, Duryodhana is also like Samba, literally. So Samba is because he's Sa Amba. Shiva blesses him in the Ardhanari form and grants him a son that will carry out this. Duryodhana is also created, if you look at the Kritya story,
same way.
as a mixture of Parvati and Mahadeva. So it's, I think, a multifaceted exercise that is going on
Daughters
at the
always
epic.
marry somebody who reminds them of their father.
Exactly.
So Sam and
Exactly.
Duryodhan were
Yeah, yeah.
reflections on the
Father-in-law and
same mirror.
son-in-law were interestingly quite common in their objective they carried out. So Shamba also succeeds in carrying out, the last leg of the Bhumibar Haran project. Right.
Exactly.
So we can conclude today's episode by saying very clearly that Duryodhana's so-called body of iron or steel was a result of the blessings or the creation of the Daityas and of Ishvara himself, but it did not give him complete power or it did not protect his life, but it gave him a little bit of extra protection. And definitely, Gandhari had no role in creating this body. This is how we can conclude this myth. So we will be back next week with more such discussions. Those who are viewing this video, we request you again. If you have any myth which you want to be discussed in this episode, please do let us know by leaving a comment so that we'll take up these myths further. So thank you, Vijay. Thank you, Pranshu.
Thank you.
So it's time to say goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.